Hello and welcome to a COVID 19 quarantine special of the Ranveer Show. I actually got my cousin to record this one because my entire team is spread all over the city going about their remote work culture. So, for today's episode, I thought everyone's at home, everyone's looking for content recommendations. And honestly, I believe that when it comes to content, you should only invest your time in content if it's going to stay with you after maybe a year or two of watching or consuming that kind of content, just like the Ranveer Show. Today we're talking about my top 10 mind movies. That's right, mind. These are the movies that if you watch once will probably stay with you for the rest of your life. And the reason I wanted to include these on the Ranveer Show is because I feel that if you're a listener of this podcast, you are a deep thinker. You analyze everything that you consume. Keeping that in mind, these are my quick 10 recommendations. At number 10, a very common mind recommendation. It's Shutter Island starring Leonardo DiCaprio. Shutter Island is a movie about a mental asylum, about a detective who reaches the mental asylum in order to solve a mystery and then figures even more mysteries about the island that the mental asylum is located on. This is one of those movies that will keep you gripped throughout, that will scare you. And at the end of the movie, there's a twist involved. And that twist will kind of mess with your head even more. It's one of those Leonardo DiCaprio movies that I feel is kind of underrated that more people need to watch. Okay, number 9, keeping it much lighter, Inside Out. It's a animated Pixar movie. It's basically about a girl and your, usual preteen problems, but from the perspective of your soul, your spirit, your mood, your ego, your emotions. So, usually animated movies have characters where they probably animate an insect or a bird or, a living being like that. Here, the animated objects are all the girl's emotions. So, anger is shown as one of the characters. Whatever, love is shown as one of the characters. Embarrassment is shown as one of the characters. Ego is shown as one of the characters. It's one of those movies that will make you analyze yourself a lot. And there's some stories and some concepts that can only be explained through animation. So, other than the movie Up by Pixar, which impacted me on a deep romantic level, this is that one movie which is animated, which I recommend to all my friends and especially listeners of the Ranveer Show because all of y'all are deep thinkers. Okay, next movie recommendation we got The Shining, starring Jack Nicholson. It is a horror movie, but it's not a horror movie just about ghosts or monsters. It's not just got jump scares. The Shining is a classic when it comes to filmmaking. It also analyzes human spirit, and especially during this phase of quarantine, this one will talk to you. What I recommend is that you don't watch this movie if you're someone who's staying alone, but if you're someone who's staying with your family, watch it. It's one of those horror movies that you definitely should watch, especially if you enjoy film in general. There's a lot of people who don't watch horror movies because they don't want it to stay with them at night. This isn't one of those horror movies. This doesn't have really scary scenes other than like a few. It has mind bending scenes. Some of the scenes are so weird. Some of the things that happen in the story are so weird that the weirdness of the movie stays with you. And it's a cult classic. So, as a human being, I think it's your responsibility to watch The Shining. Okay, next one. If you ever had a bad breakup, at number 7, we have Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. If you've drifted away from a close friend, from a close family member, and of course, from someone who you loved a lot at some point in your life, The Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind, starring Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet, will help you, will help you analyze yourself, will help you think about love from a third person perspective, from a macro perspective. You look at the whole concept of love from a top view. It'll really make you understand a breakup better, understand the dynamics of a breakup better. If you've just had a breakup, this movie might hurt you a little bit. But if you're already in the process of healing and you just want some kind of help in that healing process, I do believe that this movie will help you a bit. The director has kind of shot it in a little strange way. It's a dive into Jim Carrey's mind in this movie, where he's had a breakup with someone and he's trying to erase the memories of that person. So it's a movie that'll mess with how you perceive your memories about that person who you loved or that person who you were close to at one point in your life. Definitely should watch it, especially if you enjoy slightly different filmmaking. Okay, my next recommendation at number 6, very good movie. It's called Get Out. Again, it's slightly a horror movie, slightly a horror movie. It's not an all out horror movie. It doesn't have ghosts or monsters, but it is one of those movies that stays with you. It will mess with your head. I don't even want to talk much about it because it's one of those movies where you should just let the movie speak for itself. I'll tell you this, it's directed by Jordan Peele. He used to run a comedy show. I think he still runs one called Key and Peele. You'll find fantastic Key and Peele videos on YouTube. So if you're ever just up for, fooling around, if you just want great comedy content shot in a beautiful way, look for Key and Peele videos on YouTube. The same guy has gone and directed this movie. So it is a scary movie, it's a mind bending movie, but it will also make you laugh a lot and it will stay with you. And it's one of those movies you can watch like 5, 6 times and never get bored of it. Highly, highly recommended that you watch Get Out. At number five, it's an all out horror movie. I know I've been recommending a lot of horror movies, but I'll tell you what, the reason I recommend horror movies is because they stay with you. Good horror movies are usually built on very mind bending concepts that make you look at society in a different way, that kind of expose the evils inside people. That's what I feel about ghosts, monsters, and evils. Rather than being afraid of the ones on the outside, you should be afraid of the ones on the inside. That's a very nice Dadaji line for you guys. But even when it comes to the devil, it's about, I think, five people stuck in an elevator, and one of them is the devil, Satan. So the whole movie is about how they figure out who's the devil inside the elevator and how each of them slowly starts dying through the process of figuring that mystery out. It will teach you a little bit about life. I don't think this movie did too well, but it's one of those underrated classics. It will scare you in some parts. Do not watch it if you don't enjoy horror movies. Watch Get Out and The Shining instead. Of the three, Get Out is the least scary. Next, The Shining, then this one, Devil. Okay, next, fourth. This one's kind of common, but I do feel that it's one of those movies that if you watch again and again, it'll teach you something new. It'll make you understand the movie deeper. It'll start making you question the way your mind works and the way your dreams work. The movie's called Inception. According to me, it's one of Christopher Nolan's best movies. According to me, Christopher Nolan is possibly the best director of all time. I know that we've got arguments like, oh no, Scorsese is a better director, or Quentin Tarantino is a better director. I genuinely feel that Christopher Nolan is an obsessed director, and this is the piece of work of his where he's put the most of himself into it, where he's really kind of constructed this elaborate story. It's called Inception for a reason. It's about dreams. It's about the world of dreams. It's about lucid dreaming, being in control of your dreams, entering other people's dreams. Very complicated movie. You have to watch this with subtitles on. If you're someone who really enjoys investing time in a movie in order to exercise your mind, watch this movie if you haven't watched it already. Very entertaining. I think I've watched this movie 10, 20 times. Usually, if I'm dating anyone, I ensure that this is the movie I show them if they haven't seen it already, because I'm all about that deep conversation. And if you like deep conversation, you probably like super deep movies as well. Of this entire list, I think this movie is the deepest one. Okay, next one. Another Christopher Nolan classic, which will mess with your head, which is probably as difficult to understand as Inception. It's Interstellar. It's about time travel. It's about space travel. It's about black holes. And it is about the dimension beyond ours. By that, I mean that human beings live in a 3D dimension where there is length, there is breadth, there is height. Okay. So if there's an object in front of us, our phones, it has a length, it has breadth, it has thickness or height. Now, human beings, the way our minds are built, we are not capable of understanding a dimension beyond these three dimensions. Interstellar talks about that dimension beyond these three dimensions, and that dimension is called time. So, here's one of the things I retained from Interstellar. They talk about time as a linear concept. That means you can go backwards in time, you can go forward in time. So, the year 1999 is happening at the same time that 2020 is happening, but it's just different perspectives because our minds aren't developed enough. We can only perceive 2020 as the moment of time that's happening right now. But right now, 1999 is happening at the same time. Did you get it? No, don't worry about it. Watch Interstellar and then listen to this podcast again so I get one more listen or one more view on this podcast and you understand this statement better. Trust me, you will start perceiving the world in a different way. And a lot of the logic used in Interstellar is also spoken about in the world of yoga as a way to understand and start perceiving the fourth dimension as a dimension beyond the three that we know of. Okay, now we're at the top of our list, number two and number one. These are the two movies that had a very deep impact on me. I actually struggled to place them. I didn't know which one I should keep at number two, which one I should keep at number one. Number two, another underrated movie. It's become a TV classic. They used to show this a lot on television sets all over the world. It's called The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, starring Brad Pitt. It is a slightly sad movie. It's about a guy who was born old. Like when he was born, he had the physical appearance and the physical features of a really old man. And throughout his entire life, he ages backwards. It's an incredible concept when you think about it. Um, Honestly, it's one of those movies where you start living Brad Pitt's life. He's playing Benjamin Button in the movie, and the way they've directed it, the way they've shown the way his life pans out, you start putting yourself in his mind within the movie. He ages backwards, okay? So at the end of his life, he actually becomes an infant. And throughout the length of his life, he actually falls in love with this lady who's normal. She's born as a normal person and she grows old. So while she's growing old, he's growing young. And that dynamic really messes with your head. The way they've shown historical events in the movie really messes with your head. The way they've shown that society treats him really messes with your head. At the end of the movie, some of those scenes will stay with you for life. At the end of his life, when he's remembering all the amazing characters that he met throughout his life, that's something that will stay with you. That's something that stayed with me, and that's a movie I do recommend to you. And the final movie, unlike most of the mind movies that we've spoken about in this list, the final movie is a commercially very successful movie. It stars Jim Carrey. It's called Bruce Almighty. It's about a guy who meets God one day. God is played by Morgan Freeman. And God tells Bruce that, you know what, for some time, you'll get to be God. You'll have all my powers. So it's a regular guy who's kind of fallen out of love with his own life and he gets all of God's powers and therefore gets a lot of perspective on the world and realizes how small he is in this big bad world that we know of. It's a movie that I saw as a 10-year-old. And honestly, I felt like I was an atheist before that, or I didn't understand the concept of God. But I genuinely feel that even if you're someone who doesn't believe in God, that's fine. This movie will make you question that concept of a higher power. Is there something beyond humans? Which I strongly believe there is, by the way. I think you guys would have guessed that by watching the podcast till this point. But highly recommended if you haven't seen that movie. It's also extremely funny. And those are the best kind of mind movies. Everything doesn't have to be serious. It can mess with your head, and at the same time, it can entertain you like crazy. So that was the short episode of the Ranveer Show today. I hope you guys had fun. I hope you enjoyed this list of quarantine movies that I prepared for you guys. Lots of love from Ranveer as always. If you're watching this on YouTube, share this video with your friends. If you're listening to it on audio platforms, share this audio listening concept with your close, smart people who are looking for mind-bending content recommendations. Until next time, guys, from Ranveer Alabadia on the Ranveer Show. Boom. We'll see you later.